I want you to picture a specific moment. It's, I don't know, a Tuesday night. You're on your couch. TV's on, but you're not really watching. You're on your phone,
Yeah.
scrolling.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. And then your thumb just stops. And there it is, the thing, you know. Maybe it's that espresso machine with the perfect chrome finish.
Mhm.
Or maybe it's a pair of limited edition sneakers.
Mhm.
Or a vacation package to a place where the water is just impossibly blue. Your fingers just hovering over that buy now button. You feel that little jolt in your chest. Before you click, I want to ask you a question, and it's a really provocative one.
Okay.
Is that money you're about to spend better used if it just disappears?
Disappears. Wow, that's a strong word to start with. I mean,
Right.
most people want their money to turn into something solid, not vanish into thin air.
Exactly. That's the whole point.
Oh,
We want stuff. We want the Amazon box to show up on the porch. But the real question is money best spent when it eventually just dissolves into a memory? Or is it better spent on a physical object you can hold, you can polish, you can put on a shelf?
so it's the classic battle, the tangible versus the ephemeral. And if we're being honest, most of us, we default to the tangible. It feels safer. It feels like real value.
Of course it does.
But I think what we're going to find out today is that our definition of value is often completely upside down.
I think you're absolutely right.
Hmm.
Because today we are doing a deep dive into the art of spending money.
Mm.
We're really tearing into the work of Morgan Housel, specifically his new book on this exact topic. And to kick this whole thing off, I have to tell you a story that Housel shares. It's the story of the chair guy.
Oh, this story, yes. This is like the foundational myth of this entire discussion. It's perfect.
It really is. So let's set the scene. It's the early 2000s. Morgan Housel is just a kid. He's 19 years old.
Yeah.
And he's working as a valet at a five-star hotel in Los Angeles.
And when you say five-star, you don't mean like nice business hotel.
No. I mean the kind of place where the air smells like expensive perfume
Mm.
and the driveway is just a constant parade of Ferraris, Bentleys, and Rolls Royces.
The kind of place where if you have to ask how much something costs, you are definitely in the wrong zip code.
Precisely. So Housel is parking these incredible cars, making minimum wage, and just watching this river of extreme wealth flow past him every day. And one day, the hotel hosts an invite-only furniture show for the city's elite.
So we're not talking IKEA here.
Not even close. We're
Yeah.
talking about museum pieces that you can happen to sit on.
Oh.
The absolute top tier of interior design.
Got it.
So the event wraps up, and a man walks out to the valet stand waiting for his car. He's chatting with a friend, and he's holding a receipt or some kind of paperwork, and he just casually mentions, just drops it into the conversation, that he bought an armchair.
Just an armchair, one chair,
One single chair. And he mentions the price, $21,000.
$21,000 in the early 2000s.
Yes.
If you adjust that for inflation, I mean, you're talking about the price of a really decent car, a whole sedan, just
Yeah.
sitting in your living room.
Exactly. And you have to remember, Housel's 19. He and the other valets are just standing there, jaws on the floor. To them, 21 grand is a life-changing amount of money. It's college tuition. It's a down payment on a house.
It's everything.
And this guy just spent it on something to put his butt on. So they're just looking at him like he's an alien species. And the guy, he notices.
He sees the shock on their faces.
He sees these kids just staring at him.
Yeah.
And he stops. He looks at them, kind of shrugs, and says something that I think has haunted Housel to this day. He says, "Boys, I know, it's crazy. But when you have money, this is what you're supposed to do."
Supposed to do. Oof. That phrase is doing a lot of heavy lifting right there, isn't it?
It stuck me cold when I read it. He didn't say, "Oh, you should see the craftsmanship. The wood is from a 400-year-old oak." He didn't say, "It's the most comfortable chair in the world."
No defense of the actual object.
None. He essentially said, "I am following a script. He's just playing a part."
It creates this image of the purchase, not as a personal desire, but as a uniform. If you're a soldier, you wear camo. If you're a wealthy socialite in LA, you buy the $21,000 chair. It's an obligation.
And the real tragedy is he might not even like the chair. He's just paying a fortune to satisfy a rule book that nobody actually wrote down.
It reminds me of that scene in American Psycho with the business cards. Remember that?
Right.
They're obsessing over the font and the cardstock bone, silly and rail.
Oh, yeah.
It's this strict, rigid adherence to a social code that signals, I belong here. If that man had walked out and said, I just bought a Lazy Boy recliner because it's super comfy, he would have broken the con. He would have lost status, even if he was way more comfortable.
So he's trapped. He's incredibly rich, but he's trapped. And that right there brings us to the core premise of what we're doing today. We are looking at Morgan Housel's The Art of Spending Money. Now, a lot of our listeners will know Husserl from The Psychology of Money.
which was a massive bestseller, a fantastic
A
book.
huge book.
But we really need to distinguish between the two. The Psychology of Money was largely about the science of accumulation. How do you save? How does compounding work? How do you not blow up your entire portfolio? It's about getting the money.
It's the mechanics, the how-to guide.
Right. This new work is different. This is about the art of using it. Once you have the money, whether it's $100 or $100 million, how do you actually let it leave your hands? How do you spend it?
So why call it an art and not a science? I mean, isn't there an optimal, mathematically correct way to spend?
Well, see, science implies there is one right answer. In engineering, there is a correct way to build a bridge. If you ignore the laws of physics, the bridge falls down, period. That's science.
Okay.
But spending is totally subjective. What brings you immense joy might seem like a complete waste of money to me. And what makes me feel secure, like, say, having a full year of expenses in a savings account, might make you feel like you're missing out on life.
So if I buy a vintage comic book for 500 bucks, my wife might say that's a total waste. But to me, it's art.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no spreadsheet in the world that can settle that argument.
Exactly. Spreadsheets can tell you if you can afford the comic book. They cannot tell you if you should buy it. And that's the art. The central thesis here is that money is way less about math and much more about the stories we tell ourselves. Spending is an expression of our personality, our history, our emotions.
And I love the mission statement that Husserl proposes. He wants to move us from mindless consumption, that chair guy mentality, to intentional independence.
Intentional independence, that's the goal. It's about decoupling your spending from what society says you should do and aligning it with who you actually are and what you actually want.
Okay, so let's unpack the psychology first. If spending is really an expression of our history, we have to talk about why we buy what we buy. Because, let's be honest, looking at other people's spending habits is wild. You see people making decisions that look absolutely, completely irrational.
It is so easy to judge from the outside. But there's a maxim from the foster care system that Husserl cites, and I think it's the most empathetic lens you can possibly apply to finance. All behavior makes sense with enough information.
All behavior makes sense. That's a really bold claim. I mean, you see someone drowning in credit card debt to buy designer clothes, and it just doesn't seem to make any sense. It seems like bad math.
It is bad math. But humans are not calculators. We're emotional survival machines. If you see someone spending $200,000 on a master's degree in a field that only pays $40,000 a year, on a spreadsheet, that is a financial disaster.
A total disaster.
But if you dig into their life, maybe their parents never went to college, maybe they were told their whole life they weren't smart enough. That degree isn't an investment in future earnings, it's an investment in self-worth. It's a receipt that says, I am smart enough.
So we're judging the purchase, but we're completely missing the internal logic.
Precisely. Husserl brings up this concept he calls the snubbed effect. It's based on a quote from a newspaper columnist named Robert Quillen way back in 1928. He wrote, "The more you were snowed while poor, the more you enjoy displaying your wealth."
1928. That context is really important, isn't it?
Oh, it's crucial. I mean, think about what came right before 1928. You had World War I, a massive global trauma. You had the Spanish flu pandemic. You had a nasty recession in 1920. People had been miserable and scared and distracted for an entire decade.
So the Roaring Twenties weren't just about a good stock market.
No, they roared as a psychological reaction to all that misery. It was revenge spending before we even had a term for it.
Right.
When people feel small or scared or snubbed, they use money to make themselves feel big and safe again.
You know, that reminds me of what I saw right after the COVID lockdowns. As soon as the airports opened back up, people were booking these huge trips they couldn't really afford. It wasn't about the destination. It was about proving I am free. I can move again.
Yes. And on a more personal level, Tiffany Elish, who's a brilliant financial educator, she calls this post-traumatic broke syndrome.
That is such a vivid term.
Yeah.
Post-traumatic broke syndrome.
And it is so real. If you have ever experienced deep financial insecurity, I'm talking eviction notices, the lights getting turned off, actual hunger, that kind of trauma literally rewires your brain. So when you finally get money, the logical thing to do is save it, right?
Of course.
But the emotional thing to do is often one of two extremes.
Yeah, what are those extremes?
Extreme number one is hoarding. You bury the money in the backyard because you don't trust the bank, and you're terrified it's going to disappear. You live like a pauper, even if you have millions. Extreme number two is immediate, loud spending.
Because if I spend it, then I have the thing. And they can't take the thing away from me? Is that the idea?
Partly that, But it's also about signaling safety. You buy the flashy car or the expensive watch to prove to the world, and maybe more importantly to yourself, that you've made it. You are screaming, "I'm not poor anymore, look at my wrist."
So the guy buying the $21,000 chair,
Hmm.
maybe he grew up feeling like he didn't belong in those kinds of rooms.
Exactly. That chair is his entry ticket. It's his armor. And once you understand that, you stop calling him stupid for buying it, and you start seeing the wound he's trying to heal.
That's a really powerful reframe. But let's shift to the biology of it all, because sometimes it isn't trauma. Sometimes it's just brain chemistry, the dopamine trap.
The chemical of more.
I feel this constantly. I'll give you a confession. I buy a lot of tech gadgets. I'll spend weeks, maybe months, researching a new camera. I watch every single YouTube review. I compare the specs. The anticipation is it's intense. I order it. I track the package. It's out for delivery. My heart is racing. The box arrives. I open it. I hold it. And then 10 minutes later, I'm kind of bored. The feeling just evaporates into thin air.
That is a feature of human biology, not a bug. Your brain is wired to seek, not to have. Dopamine, that feel-good chemical, is released during the anticipation of a reward. It's the fuel that got our ancestors off the couch to go hunt the mammoth. Once you've killed the mammoth, you're actually eating it, the dopamine cuts off. The goal has been achieved.
So you're saying the graph of my happiness actually peaks before I make the purchase?
Housel describes this visualization that's perfect. Imagine a graph of the value you get from an item. The line is highest the day before you get it. That's when you're dreaming about how this new camera will make you a world-famous photographer. You're buying a fantasy.
And then the reality arrives, and I'm still just me, but now I have a new camera.
Right, and the value on the graph drops off a cliff immediately upon possession. It just flatlines. And interestingly, it only spikes again if you lose the item, then you feel the pain of loss. But the joy of just having it, it's incredibly short-lived.
There's a quote from Will Smith in the book that sums this up so well. He said something like, "Becoming famous is amazing, but being famous, it's a mixed bag."
It's the thrill of the chase. Once you are famous or once you have the Ferrari, it just becomes your Tuesday, becomes your new baseline. And this is the hedonic treadmill. You run and run to get the thing, you get it, you get used to it, and you're right back where you started, already looking for the next thing to chase.
So if we're wired this way, are
Yeah.
we just doomed? Is the only option to become a monk and renounce all possessions?
No, not at all. But you have to change the equation. The formula for happiness when it comes to money is this. Happiness equals results minus expectations.
Happiness equals results minus expectations.
Most people focus entirely on the results part. They want more money, more stuff, better stuff. But if your income doubles and your expectations for what you need double right along with it, your happiness hasn't moved an inch. You're just running faster on that treadmill.
So the trick is to manage the expectation side of the equation.
Exactly. If you can get a raise but keep your expectations grounded, that gap, that surplus between your reality and your expectations, that's where happiness lives.
That makes perfect sense. But man, it is incredibly hard to keep expectations low when we are constantly comparing ourselves to other people. Which brings us to our next big topic, status, envy, and what Housel calls social debt.
This is where the rubber really meets the road, or, as Housel puts it, where the Toyota meets the BMW.
Let's get right into this debate, because I know listeners are going to have strong feelings about this one. Explain the Toyota versus BMW metaphor.
Okay, so it's a way to distinguish between spending for utility and spending for status. Let's say you have a top-of-the-line Toyota Land Cruiser. It costs a lot of money, but what are you paying for? You're paying for rock-solid reliability. You're paying for heated leather seats because they feel good on your back. You're paying for a premium sound system because it sounds great to your ears.
Okay, so that's utility. It serves me directly.
Right. It's for you. Now, take an entry-level luxury car, a base model BMW or a Mercedes. Maybe it has cloth seats. Maybe the engine is the smaller, less powerful one. Maybe it doesn't even have the navigation package, but it has the badge on the hood.
The logo.
The logo. You aren't buying that car for the driving experience because the fully loaded Toyota probably drives better. You are buying it for the signal it sends to other people at the stoplight. You are buying it for them.
But wait, I have to push back a little here. Isn't it possible to just appreciate the engineering of a BMW? Or maybe I just like the way it looks. Does it always have to be about other people?
And that's the defense everyone gives. I just like the design. And sure, sometimes that's true. But Housel proposes the island test to call our bluff on that.
I love this thought experiment. Walk us through the island test.
Okay, so imagine you are magically moved to a deserted island. You are the only person there. You will never see another human being again for the rest of your life. However, by some miracle, you still have Amazon Prime. You can order whatever you want.
Okay.
But here's the catch. No one will ever see it. No Instagram, no visitors, nothing. Just you and the coconuts.
Just me.
What do you wear? Are you wearing those $1,000 Gucci loafers that kind of pinch your toes? Or are you wearing the most comfortable pair of Nikes you can possibly find?
I'm in the Nikes. Or maybe just flip-flops, honestly.
Exactly. What car do you drive? Do you order the low-slung Lamborghini that's a pain to get in and out of and can't go over a speed bump? Or do you get the Toyota pickup that can handle the sand and has really good air conditioning?
I'm getting the Toyota, 100%.
What does your house look like? Do you need that grand foyer with the giant chandelier meant to impress guests? Or do you just want a really cozy bedroom and a massive kitchen because you like to cook?
Wow. It really strips away the veneer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If I wouldn't buy it on the island, then I'm buying it for status.
Precisely. And look, we are social animals. We live in a society. A little bit of signaling is normal. It's fine. But we need to be honest with ourselves about why we're spending the money. If you're buying the BMW primarily for the badge, you are paying what Housel calls a social tax.
And the problem with buying things for status is the man in the car paradox. This is one of my favorite observations in the entire book because it's just so humbling.
It's brutal. Think about the last time you saw a bright red Ferrari or a Lamborghini driving down the street. Be completely honest. Did you look at the driver? Did you think to yourself, wow, that person looks so fascinating. I bet they're smart and kind and have a great personality.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I probably squinted to see if it was a celebrity. And when it wasn't, I just looked back at the car.
Exactly. Or you projected yourself into the driver's seat. You thought, man, I would look so cool in that car. People would really admire me if I had that.
So the driver's just completely invisible.
He's a prop. He bought the car to be the main character, to get love and admiration from strangers. But to everyone else, he's just the stagehand moving the scenery around. We don't admire him. We use his very expensive object to fuel our own narcissism.
That is the ultimate irony. He's spending a fortune to get respect, but he's just being ignored.
And Adam Smith, the father of modern economics, wrote about this way back in 1759. He said, "We don't chase wealth for ease or for pleasure. We chase it to be observed, attended to, and taken notice of. We are just desperate to be seen."
But the paradox is that buying all this look-at-me stuff often makes people like you less.
It creates distance. And this leads to something Haskell calls social debt.
Social debt? It sounds like financial debt, but stickier.
It is. Financial debt is owing money to a bank. Social debt is when your purchases create an obligation for you to maintain an image. The classic story he uses here is Frank Lucas.
The gangster from the movie American Gangster. Denzel Washington played him.
That's the one. Frank Lucas was a massive drug kingpin in New York in the 70s. For a long, long time, he was a ghost. He dressed modestly. He acted like a regular businessman. He was making millions of dollars a day, but nobody knew who he was. He had wealth, but he had zero social debt. He didn't have to impress anyone.
He was flying completely under the radar.
Until the big boxing match. He showed up to a prize fight wearing a floor-length chinchilla coat with a matching chinchilla hat.
A chinchilla coat? That is a choice.
It was a scream for attention. And you know what? He got it. That single purchase signaled to everyone, including the police and his rival gangs, that he was the big dog. He traded his anonymity for attention, and that was the beginning of his downfall. He put a giant target on his own back.
But for us normal folks, we're not drug lords. How does social debt affect us?
It's the Diderot effect. It's lifestyle creep. Let's say you get a big promotion and you buy a really nice, expensive car. You park it in your driveway, and suddenly your house looks a little bit shabby next to this pristine car. So you decide to renovate the front porch.
And then your old patio furniture looks weird and out of place on the new porch.
So you buy new furniture, and then your clothes look kind of cheap when you're sitting on the new furniture in your nice car. It's a domino effect. Every purchase raises the baseline for the next one. You are building this high-maintenance avatar of yourself that you have to keep funding. You lose the freedom to just have a cheap day. You lose the freedom to look sloppy.
So the big insight here is that the most valuable asset isn't the coat or the car.
No. The most valuable financial asset you can possibly have is not needing to impress anyone. If you don't need their admiration, you don't need to spend the money to get it, and that is actual true freedom.
Not needing to impress anyone. I want to tattoo that on my forehead.
Yeah.
That leads us perfectly into the framework section. Because we need a way to think about all this that isn't just don't spend money. We need to distinguish between being rich and being wealthy.
Yes, this is so important. In casual conversation, we use these words as synonyms. He's rich, he's wealthy. It means the same thing. But Housel draws a very sharp, very important line between them.
Okay, lay it out for us. What is rich?
Rich is your current income. It is visible spending. If you see someone driving a $300,000 car, you know they are rich, or at least you know they had 300 grand to spend or the credit to borrow it. Rich is loud. Rich is the peacock's feathers.
Okay, so then what is wealthy?
Wealth is hidden. Wealth is the money that has not been spent. It's the money in your 401k, in your investment portfolio, in your savings account. Wealth is an option. It's the option to buy something later, or, and this is way more important, the option to do whatever you want with your time.
So you could be extremely rich, but not at all wealthy.
Absolutely. You see this with pro athletes or lottery winners all the time. They are incredibly rich, high income, high spending, but they have zero wealth. They are living paycheck to paycheck, just with much bigger zeros. Housel uses the Vanderbilt family as the ultimate cautionary tale here.
The Vanderbilts, I mean, that name is basically synonymous with American royalty.
It is. Cornelius Vanderbilt was the richest man in the world at one point. He built the railroads, but his heirs, they were obsessed with being rich. They built these massive, absurd mansions on Fifth Avenue through parties that cost millions in today's money. They were constantly competing with each other to see who could display the most status.
And what happened to them?
Within just a few generations, the entire fortune was decimated. One of the direct heirs died completely broke, because the money controlled them. They had no independence from their own lifestyle demands. They had to keep feeding the beast of appearance. They had richness, the constant flow of money out, but no wealth, the preservation of their options.
That is terrifying. It's like being on a treadmill that just keeps speeding up until you fly off the back. So the goal is to be wealthy, which means being kind of boring.
In a way, yes, the antidote to the Vanderbilt problem is what Housel calls quiet compounding. He uses a great nature analogy. Think about a tree. When you walk through a forest, the trees are all growing. But if you stand there and stare at a single tree, you can't see it happen. It's silent. It's boring. There's no parade, no fireworks. But over 50 years, that tiny sapling becomes a giant sequoia.
And that's how our money should be growing.
The best financial lives are incredibly boring and private. If you are doing it right, nobody should really know how much you have. You shouldn't be the talk of the town.
But boring doesn't sell magazines. And boring definitely doesn't get likes on Instagram.
No, it doesn't. And that's why it's so hard. It requires you to switch from using external benchmarks to internal benchmarks.
Explain that difference.
External benchmarks are all about comparison. Is my house bigger than my neighbor's? Is my car newer than my brother-in-law's? You are measuring your success against other people. Internal benchmarks are about your own life. Am I sleeping well at night? Do I feel secure? If I lost my job today, would I be completely panic-stricken or would I be okay for a while?
And quiet compounding relies entirely on those internal benchmarks. You have to be happy with the result, even if nobody else ever sees it.
You have to be okay with being the millionaire next door who drives a 10-year-old Honda. And that takes a level of confidence that is actually much harder to achieve than just buying the Ferrari.
Okay, so we want to be wealthy.
Yeah.
We want to compound quietly, but we still have to live our lives. We can't just save every single penny and stare at the wall.
Yeah.
So how do we decide what to actually spend on? Housel suggests a strategy called the wide funnel, tight filter.
This is actually borrowed from how he reads books, but it applies perfectly to spending.
How does the book analogy work?
So Housel reads a ton of books, but he quits most of them. He has a wide funnel. He'll pick up almost anything that looks remotely interesting, but he has a very tight filter. If he reads 20 or 30 pages and it doesn't hook him, he quits. He just puts it down and moves on.
I feel so guilty when I do that.
Oh,
I feel like I had to finish every book I start.
That's the sunk cost fallacy. You think, well, I paid 20 bucks for this. I have to suffer through all 400 pages. But Housel says, no, your time is way more valuable than the 20 bucks.
So how does this apply to our spending habits?
Most of us are stuck in spending ruts. We buy the same things over and over because of habit or social pressure. The wide funnel approach means you should experiment more. Treat your life like a laboratory. Maybe you've never paid for a house cleaner before. Try it just once. Maybe you've never flown first class. Try it once. Maybe you've never bought the really expensive high-end cheese. Go for it.
Okay, so try new things. Spend the money.
But, and this is the crucial part, apply the tight filter. Be ruthlessly honest about the result. Did that cleaning service actually lower your stress and make you happier? If yes, great, keep it. If the first class ticket was nice, but you realized, I slept just as badly as I do in coach, then never do it again. You have to cut what doesn't actually spark joy.
It reminds me a lot of Ramit Sethi's philosophy. Spend extravagantly on the things you love and cut costs mercilessly on the things you don't.
Yeah. Exactly. But Housel is adding the nuance that you don't actually know what you love until you experiment a bit. You have to taste the whole menu. But don't keep eating the dish just because rich people are supposed to like caviar. If you hate caviar, for God's sake, start buying it.
I love that. It turns spending into an act of self-discovery rather than just following a script.
Right. And this leads to the final framework in this section, which is the barbell approach, or, as I like to call it, the latte wars.
Oh boy. The latte factor. I have to push back here. Financial advisors love to say, stop buying the $5 latte and you'll be a millionaire. And everyone hates hearing it. But the math kind of works, doesn't it? $5 a day is nearly $2,000 a year. You invest that for 30 years at 8%, and that's real money.
Yeah.
Are we really saying we shouldn't sweat that stuff?
The math is accurate. No one's denying the math. But the psychology of that advice is often flawed. Housel argues that most family budgets aren't actually broken by lattes. They are broken by the big four: housing, cars, college, and health.
The big structural costs.
Right. If you buy a house that stretches your budget to the absolute breaking point, or you lease two luxury SUVs you can't really afford, cutting the latte isn't going to save you. You have a structural bleed.
So we're tripping over dollars to pick up pennies.
That's a great way to put it. And there's a willpower cost, too. If you spend all your mental energy every single morning fighting the urge to buy a coffee, you deplete your willpower. Then when it comes time to make a huge decision, like negotiating your car lease or your mortgage rate, you're exhausted and you make a lazy decision that costs you $10,000.
That makes a lot of sense.
What?
Warren Buffett.
Ah, yes. The ultimate counterargument.
Warren Buffett famously calculated that getting a haircut cost him $300,000.
He did. He looked at the $10 or whatever the haircut cost back then, and he calculated that if he had invested that money in his company, it would have compounded over 50 years into $300,000. So every time he spent a single dollar, he felt the pain of losing a future fortune.
That sounds absolutely exhausting. I don't think I want to live like that.
It is extreme, but it does highlight the incredible power of compounding. So the synthesis, the barbell, is this. You need to get the big four right. Control your fixed costs. Don't be house poor. If you do that, you don't have to stress about the lattes. The lattes become negligible. But at the same time, don't be wasteful. Respect the power of compounding.
So lock down the big stuff so you can enjoy the small stuff without feeling guilty.
Precisely. If your mortgage is manageable, the latte is just a latte. If your mortgage is crushing you, that latte becomes a symbol of your lack of control.
Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit. We've talked a lot about frameworks for spending, but let's get into a bit of a debate here because there's a flip side to all this saving and wealth building. Can you actually save too much? Can you be too good at this game?
This is where it gets really fascinating. We tend to glorify the saver. We think of them as the virtuous ones, the responsible ones. But Housel identifies a trap he calls frugality inertia.
Frugality inertia. It sounds like a physics problem.
It's a psychological problem. Imagine someone who spends 40 years of their life being incredibly disciplined. They save 50% of their income, they deny themselves luxuries, they clip coupons, they build their entire identity around being a saver. They look in the mirror and say, I am the guy who doesn't waste money.
Okay, and then they retire with $5 million.
Yep.
I mean, that's the American dream, right?
On paper, yes. But psychologically, it can be an absolute disaster because they cannot switch gears. They have $5 million in the bank, but they still drive across town to save 50 cents on a gallon of gas. They refuse to pay for a comfortable vacation. They die with millions in the bank, having lived this constricted, pinched life.
Because spending money feels like a violation of their very identity.
Exactly. Identity is unbelievably powerful. If your core identity is I save, then spending money feels like a loss of self. Housel mentions Harvey Firestone, the tire magnate. He was incredibly rich, but he struggled with this. He wanted to go back to a simple life, but he also couldn't escape the complexity he had built for himself. The lesson is, money should serve you. If you are serving the money by refusing to use it even when you can, you are just a servant to your own bank account.
That is a heavy thought. A servant to your own bank account. I've definitely seen that. People who are cash rich but experience poor.
So the challenge I would put to all the super savers out there is, what is the money for? If the only answer is to see the number go up, then you've turned life into a video game score. You're winning the game, but you're completely losing the point.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Isn't there an argument that living simply, even if you have the money, actually makes life better? Not because you're hoarding, but because of contrast.
Yes, this is the joy of contrast argument, and it's a really strong one.
The example that always sticks with me is the steak dinner.
Right. If you eat a filet mignon every single Tuesday night, it just becomes Tuesday dinner. It's normal, it's boring, the dopamine hit is gone. But if you eat beans and rice for a month and then you have a steak dinner, that steak tastes like heaven itself.
It's the contrast that creates the joy.
Housel talks about Shackleton's men. Ernest Shackleton, the Antarctic explorer. In 1915, his ship was crushed by the ice. They were stranded on these ice floes for months, freezing, starving, eating penguin meat, just on the brink of death.
The ultimate deprivation.
When they were finally rescued, they wrote in their journals about the sensation of having simple tea and biscuits. They called it ecstasy. They said the taste of plain bread was like a religious experience.
Because their baseline was absolute zero.
Exactly. Perpetual luxury dulls the senses. It raises your baseline so high that eventually nothing can delight you. This is why you hear about billionaires being bored. They have maxed out the dopamine. So there is a very valid argument for voluntary deprivation, not because you're cheap, but because you want to preserve your ability to feel joy.
So being frugal can actually be a strategy for maximizing pleasure over the long run.
In a way, yes. A simple life makes the occasional luxury really pop. It keeps the island test honest. You aren't numb to the good stuff.
I really like that reframing. It stops frugality from being about suffering and makes it about strategic contrast.
Strategic contrast. I like that. I'm going to use that.
So let's move to how we apply all this in real life. We've got the psychology, we've got the frameworks. What are the ultimate purchases? If we have the money, what should we actually be buying? Housel says, without a doubt, the ultimate purchase is independence.
This is the holy grail. We need to reframe what saving is. Saving isn't not spending. Saving is buying time.
Buying time.
Every single dollar you save is a claim check on your own future. Housel talks about achieving level 15 independence.
Level 15, what does that look like?
It's the ability to wake up in the morning and say, I can do what I want, when I want, with whom I want, for as long as I want.
That's the dream.
It is. And to illustrate this, he uses the classic parable of the Mexican fisherman. Now, I know you've heard this, but we have to tell it for the listeners because it just nails the point so perfectly.
It's one of my all-time favorites. Let's do it.
Okay, so an American investment banker, high-powered MBA, completely stressed out, is taking a much-needed break at a pier in a small coastal Mexican village. A small boat pulls up with just one fisherman on it, and inside the boat are several large, beautiful yellowfin tuna.
The good stuff.
The best stuff. The American compliments the fish and asks, how long did it take you to catch them? And the fisherman replies, oh, only a little while.
And the banker immediately goes into optimization mode. He can't help himself.
Right. He asks, so why didn't you stay out longer and catch more fish? The fisherman says, well, I have enough to support my family's immediate needs. The American is baffled. He asks, but what do you do with the rest of your time?
And this is the beautiful part.
The fisherman smiles and says, I sleep late, fish a little, play with my children, take siestas with my wife Maria, and I stroll into the village each evening where I sip wine and play guitar with my amigos. I have a full and busy life.
And the American just cannot handle this inefficiency. He's like, my brain is breaking.
He laughs. He says, look, I have an MBA from Harvard. I can help you. You should spend more time fishing. With the proceeds, you can buy a bigger boat. With the proceeds from the bigger boat, you could buy several boats. Eventually, you'd have a whole fleet. You could open your own cannery. You could move to LA. Then New York, you'd be huge.
And the fisherman just asks, but
yeah,
how long will all this take?
The banker says, oh, 15 to 20 years. The fisherman asks, but what then? The banker laughs and says, that's the best part. When the time is right, you'd sell your company's stock to the public and become very rich. You'd make millions.
Millions. Then what?
The banker says, then you would retire. You would move to a small coastal fishing village where you would sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take siestas with your wife, and stroll to the village in the evenings to play guitar with your amigos.
The punchline hits so hard. He proposed spending 20 years grinding, stressing, and missing his kids' childhoods to achieve the exact life the fisherman already had.
That is the ultimate cautionary tale of wealth without independence. The banker saw money as the goal. The fisherman saw time as the goal. If you already have level 15 independence, even if you're doing it on a very small budget, you have already won the game. Don't trade it for a pile of money that you'll just use to try and buy it back later.
It really forces you to ask yourself, am I the fisherman or am I the banker?
And most of us, if we're honest, are the banker, rushing around trying to buy the fisherman's life.
Another application Housel talks about is memories as assets. And this connects right back to my opening question. Spending on experiences versus things.
Housel argues that experiences pay a memory dividend. If you go on a big trip with your friends in your 20s, you don't just enjoy the trip itself. You get to enjoy the memory of that trip for the next 60 years. You talk about it at reunions, you laugh about it. It pays out every single time you recall it.
It's like an annuity of joy.
It is. Whereas a car, the dividend stops the day you sell it, or the day it gets its first big scratch, or the day the new model comes out and yours suddenly looks old. Jeff Bezos uses a regret minimization framework for his big decisions. He projects himself forward to age 80, and he asks, will I regret not doing this?
And Housel suggests writing a reverse obituary.
This is a bit morbid, but it is highly effective. Write down what you want people to say about you at your funeral. He was kind, she was a great mother, he was generous, she was always there when I needed her.
Does anyone ever write, he owned a 2024 Ferrari?
Never. No one lists the horsepower of your car or the square footage of your house on your tombstone. They list your character and your connections. So if you are spending all your money on the Ferrari and the house, but you're neglecting the kindness and presence part because you're working 80 hours a week to pay for it all, you are investing in assets that will not make the final cut.
That is a powerful filter. Will this make the obituary?
Exactly. It clarifies things instantly.
Let's talk about kids, because this is where spending gets really, really tricky. Parents want to give their kids the world. We want them to have all the things we didn't have. But Housel warns about this.
He brings up the Rockefellers again, one of the richest families in history. You'd think they would spoil their kids rotten. But they were obsessive about keeping money quiet. They wanted their kids to struggle, just a little bit.
Why? Why would you manufacture struggle?
Because they knew that if the kids didn't understand scarcity, they would never understand value. If you can have anything you want, you value nothing. It goes right back to that contrast idea. If you never feel cold, you can't really appreciate a warm fire.
But there's a deeper lesson on parenting you mentions too, isn't there?
Yes. Housley says the luckier you are, and that means the more money you have, the nicer you should be.
The luckier you are, the nicer you should be. I like that a lot.
Think about it. If you have money, you have security. You don't need to fight for status. You don't need to push other people down to get ahead. You've already won. So your duty is to be kind. He tells his own kids this. Success is when the people you want to love you actually do love you.
That's the real metric.
That's the only metric that matters at the end of the day. Money can't buy that. In fact, using money as a weapon or a shield can actively prevent you from ever achieving it.
So we've covered a massive amount of ground today. From the $21,000 chair to the Mexican fisherman. We've talked about dopamine, social debt, and memory dividends. But I want to land this plane. What does this all mean for the listener right now? How do we take this from interesting philosophy to actionable change?
I think we can boil it down to 3 specific exercises you can do this week.
Okay, hit me. Exercise 1.
Exercise number 1 is the utility check. Look at your last 3 significant purchases, or look at the next big one you're planning. Be brutally honest with yourself. Did you buy it for the product itself, the utility, the comfort, the function? Or did you buy it for the reaction you hoped other people would have?
And if it was for the reaction?
Don't beat yourself up about it. Just recognize it. Awareness is the first step to stopping that social debt cycle. Just ask yourself, would I buy this if I lived on the deserted island?
Okay, I can do that. Exercise 2.
The wide funnel experiment. Try one new small spending experiment this week. It could be a new type of food, a small service you've never used, a different way to travel. Spend 20 or 50 bucks on something you normally wouldn't.
Get out of the rut.
Exactly. And then you have to evaluate it. Did it bring you genuine joy? Did it buy you more time? If yes, great, consider keeping it. If not, cut it. The goal is to build your own customized spending life, not the one the commercials tell you to have.
And exercise 3.
Define enough. This is the hardest one by far, but you have to do it. Pick a number, or pick a lifestyle, a finish line. If I have a paid-off house and I can travel twice a year without worrying, that is enough.
Why is this so important?
Because if you don't define the finish line, the goalpost will move every single time you get a raise. You will never stop running. You'll be the investment banker grinding away for a life you could have had 10 years ago.
You have to know when you've won the game so you can finally stop playing. I want to leave the listeners with one final thought from this deep dive. It's something Housel hints at throughout the book. Every time you spend $1, you're casting a vote. You aren't just buying a thing. You're casting a vote for the life you want to live. Not the life your neighbor wants, not the life the advertiser wants. Your life.
And true wealth is the ability to wake up in the morning, look around, and say, I have enough.
That's a powerful place to be. Thanks for exploring the art of spending with us today. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
Stay wealthy.